next presenter is Will Allen from Growing Power. And I want to welcome Will. He'll be seated until I'm finished talking. So, but just say welcome to him anyway. Growing Power is a national non-profit organization and land trust supporting people from diverse backgrounds and the environment in which they are living by helping to provide equal access to healthy, high quality, safe and affordable food for people in all communities. Growing Power implements the mission by providing hands-on training, on-the-ground demonstration, outreach, and technical assistance through the development of community food systems that helps people grow, process, market, and distribute food in a sustainable manner. So this goes very well with Alex was telling us from the farmers clubs in Malawi. This is just happening in the US. Will start with showing a short video, and then he will come to the States and tell more about the whole project. So once again, welcome to Will Allen.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here. First of all, I want to thank Lisa because I was sitting here with Lisa and I don't know the gentleman next. Okay, from Nova Scotia. So I know all about your business now. So I'm ready to be hired. I'm a hard worker. I come from a farming background, been farming for 59 years. So I'm ready to go if you guys need a good man. But it's great, really, it's great to be here to talk about something that I've been engaged in all my life and come from a legacy of farmers from not too far away from South Carolina, where my mother and father were sharecroppers that dropped their plow and mule in the 30s and moved to the Washington, D.C. area. And I was brought up in Washington, outside of Washington in Maryland. To know where my food came from, and I ate, obviously I ate a lot of good food because look at me now. So we produced about 95% of our food, and we were recycling back then because we threw away nothing on the farm. The waste that we created, we put back into Mother Earth, and that's what I do today. So what you guys are doing is such a wonderful thing, to be able to recycle clothes and get them to folks less fortunate around the world is really a very important thing, and that creates jobs. And what I'm doing today is really about that recycling too, because without us taking care of Mother Earth, for us not to put the waste that we create, the food that we just ate today, there's some waste. And chances are that waste will go into a landfill. But we try to rescue as much as we can. Last year, 40 million pounds of carbon and nitrogen we turned into compost. So what we do is grow soil from waste to be able to do the farming. Now, when I started this organization, we're in our 21st year. We just finished our 20th year, April 2nd. We started growing soil way back then. And to be able to grow the food that we do now, we have 25 farms, 25 acres of greenhouse production, over 300 acres of vegetable production in Milwaukee, Chicago, and Madison, Wisconsin, where we are operating areas. We have to recycle. We have to grow soil. And that's so important to every one of us in the future of our kids and grandkids and the future of saving the earth. Because right now we live in a world where we can't grow enough good food. Only about 3% of the food that we consume every day is good food. Now, our good food is supposed to be our medicine. So I think the only way for us to end this healthcare crisis that we have in this country and around the world is to go back to those days when we ate good food. Because you see, our soil is 50% less fertile than it was 50 years ago. And when we eat food, it's all about the soil. It's what's in the soil. So we have to resurrect our soil. Whether we're in an urban area, a suburban area, or we're in a rural area, our soil is contaminated. And we're eating a lot of food. We're eating a lot of food that's contaminated with a lot of bad guys. So growing new soil is what we do. So it's somewhat connected to what you all do. So that's why it was very interesting to hear Lisa's story that she told me while I was sitting here. And I really admire what you all are doing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a little bit about the history of our organization and take you through where we are today. We have 140 employees in Milwaukee and Chicago and Madison. And we started 20 years ago with just me volunteering doing this work, working with some youth. And somehow I got sucked into running this nonprofit organization that has grown over the years. So I'm going to take you through a slide presentation. Hopefully it won't take 40 days and 40 nights because it's 1,062 slides. Now, I know you guys have probably never seen a PowerPoint with 1,062 slides. So here we go. Okay. I guess this thing works. Do I have to point it somewhere? Up in the air? Okay. And in 1993 is when I bought the last remaining farm in the city of Milwaukee. And this is what it looked like. And these were the young people. Now, these young people are over 30 years of age, and some of them actually work for us now. Gone to college, come back to the community and work for us. But there's something different about these young kids that the kids are different today. And the thing that makes them different, and I'll tell you what it is. I usually ask people, but that takes some time, so I want to move along. What's different about these kids and the kids today is they have their pants pulled up. So we started growing soil back then, composting. I call it growing soil. And this is what the facility looked like. There was 6 A-frame greenhouses built in the late 1920s, and that was the back 40, and you'll see a transformation. We started scaling up our composting and collecting waste way back then. This thing isn't working very well. And then we also started vermicomposting. That's with worms, making fertilizer. And this was our first aquaponics system. And you'll see, remember this image because we grow fish, a lot of fish, and we train people all over the world how to do aquaponics. So we had a number of those along greenhouse. We also grew a lot of bedding plants. The kids would come in and transplant these bedding plants, and we would decorate around the city, and I would go out in the back 40 and work with these kids and teach them how to grow. And one of the things I noticed that many of these kids had really poor reading and writing skills. So after they did something physical, we'd bring them in, and they would have to write about it, and their grades improved. And that's something that the schools use today. And we also would teach them how to preserve food and how to use hand tools to develop their life skills and build things. And then more and more kids, I was volunteering back in those days, working with the kids. I also worked with kids from the juvenile justice system. Some of these kids had gone out and done some really bad stuff, and they were coming back into society. If I can get this to move. And they would bring in compost at their facility, put it on the hillside over the grass, and they would grow food and donate it to Second Harvest, Feeding America. We would also take the bedding plants that they grew and decorate around buildings. This was a neighborhood center where they had a lot of thefts. We removed the shrubs so that the staff could see the cars. There were a lot of car thefts. And we planted these flowers. The kids planted the flowers that they had. Oh, there we go. I'll never make it through this 1062 with this clicker. And they would put these flowers, and a wonderful thing happened. All of a sudden, the car thefts went away because the thieves felt uncomfortable because people started looking at the flowers, and I guess they thought they were looking at them, and that kind of remediated the problem. Same thing on vacant lots, where I would call these flower explosions, and one day we would engage the community and plant these flowers. That would happen in one day, and this is where drug dealers would hang out on these corners. And all of a sudden, the drug dealers went away because people started looking at the beautiful flowers, and the kids would take care of those as summer jobs at a time in Milwaukee where a lot of the money for summer jobs went away, and this was a way for them to earn money. And then folks from out west, from the native communities where diabetes rates were over 50% on some of the tribes, and they would come with their youth to learn about how to grow food because they come from tribes where they were gatherers and not farmers. And then on the south side of Chicago, in Inglewood, where there was a murder almost every day, we would go down and build hoop houses and engage the kids. And in 1995, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel wrote a front page story about me working with these kids, and it kind of pushed us into the turn of the century where growing power really started growing. And you'll see the transformation. This is what our facility looks like today. Quite a transformation from those earlier years. And we also, 5 blocks away, is the largest public housing project that's now been reconstructed into a mixed income community where we operate a 30,000 square foot garden, and we have the only in-house waste container for food waste, food scraps that go to our compost. We also are engaged in the school that's connected and the community center that's connected to this development. But the problem is this area where we operate is over 3.5 miles away from the closest grocery store. So it's a food desert. So growing power is powered by a lot of renewable energy because that's going to be part of the future of agriculture. Industrial agriculture uses about 25% of our fossil fuel. So we need to reduce that in this new kind of farming, more intensive local farming that we have. We call this community food center. Community food center is where people can come and learn about how food is grown and get trained and actually get inspired to get something started. We're also a multicultural, multi-generational organization. And these are some of the faces of the people that visit Growing Power. With 30,000 toured our facility on Silver Spring last year. So I'll go through these. I think you guys thought I was kidding when I said I had 1,000. Nobody ever believes me, you know. So these are the faces of people that we work with and we partner with from all over the world. Even these guys. They come. Okay, workshops. It's important. Farming, especially in America, has kind of always been looked down on. I remember when I was in school, everybody would tease the farmers. But farming is a very artful, really a profession that needs to be respected. I know in Europe and around the world, they put farmers on a pedestal with doctors and engineers and maybe not lawyers, but This is very important to learn how to farm, especially this way. So part of it is project planning and business planning, and that's one of the things that we teach when you come to workshops. We have workshops from January through June. People from all over the world come to these workshops, and they work on their project plan, their business plan, and we teach mushrooming. The medicinal value of mushrooms and the taste of mushrooms is really great. So we teach people how to do shiitake mushrooms, how to do oyster mushrooms in chandeliers, something that we came up with. And of course, growing soil. Taking waste that would wind up in the landfill and teaching people how to grow soil. So this is one of the workshops that's a lot of fun. So, we get somebody up on this 4x4 configuration that holds about 40 wheelbarrows of material, and we want to maximize it. So we get somebody up there to really get all the air pockets out, And of course, people are fascinated by some of the 7,000 pounds of worms that we have on this farm that break down the compost into worm castings, arguably the best fertilizer there is. It's all about locally grown food. So we really celebrate food. So if you come to our workshops, we serve all the meals for the 3 days, breakfast, lunch, and dinner with local and regional food. And then we have our composting operation. And everybody knows this truck. Nobody has family that works for this company. I'm going to talk about them. This is the guy that picks up our waste, right? As it rumbles through our neighborhoods. I guess they want us to think that they think green. They say they have over 17,000 acres of wildlife habitat, and I've been to their landfills, and the only thing I've seen is those big seagulls and really big rats, so I don't know what they're talking about. And of course, those trucks run on electricity. That's what somebody told me anyway, but I don't necessarily believe that. It's really all about the soil and diverting that waste from that big green truck, at least some of it. But to do that, we have to do the same thing that those guys do, is we develop relationships with like coffee roasters and brewery grain places, beer, folks that are making beer using grain. At one microbrewery, we get over 100,000 pounds a week from. And we have Miller Brewery that goes through 2 silos of grains a day. And there's lots of wood chip in our state because we have over 68% of the state is forest. So trees are coming down, and we have storms, and they're trimming. And farmer friends, because we're in a dairy state, we grow a lot of grass. And a lot of times it gets moldy and wet. So I buy it from those farmers and help those struggling rural farmers. And of course, the vegetable waste, sometimes it never gets out of those cartons. Comes in on frozen loads a lot of times, or they over-order. So vegetable waste is also a part of, on the nitrogen side, a part of our recipe. And even the boxes, they came from Mother Earth. So they all go back in to be able to grow our soil. Now we're doing this 200 feet away from our neighbors, and people always come to our facility and say, how can you do that? It's because we've been able to engage the community's on board, because we can't always guarantee that when we're loading a truck that some smells might go. So we do over 1 million pounds at our national headquarters. Hey, the clicker's working. Yeah. And we have these large rural sites. We have a number of composting sites to do the 40 million pounds of waste that we collected last year. And finished compost. This is what it looks like. And that's what we grow in. We have no digging equipment. We have no plows or rototillers. We put 2 feet of new soil on top of the existing soil, on top of concrete, asphalt, rooftops, to be able to grow this food, because the soil is contaminated. And that's why we do that. It's not responsible to start digging down. So that's why we have to grow not just a few hundred yards of soil, but thousands of yards of new soil we have to grow to be able to do what we do. And then we have these worm depositories where our 7,000 pounds of worms reside. And this particular one is a recent one we built. That's 400 yards of compost, and worms have been injected into that. And a year from now, that'll produce 40,000 pounds of fertilizer of worm castings at a cost of $4 a pound. So that waste, it's worth collecting that waste and using it to be able to grow the food. So what do we do with the finished product? I mentioned those 7,000 pounds of worms. So we have 140 human employees, but we have about 140 billion other employees, and these are the other employees. And I really like these employees because they don't talk back, they just go and do their job. How would you guys like to have employees like that? So these worm systems that we have, and we do this 365 days of the year. These red worms, 7 different varieties. Aren't they beautiful? We don't use them for fishing. And that's a cocoon. Over 20 worms comes out of that little egg-shaped capsule there. And it's a great transformative moment when you put a couple hundred worms in a child's hands, At first they'll jump back, but then they really get into it. So it's a great way of getting kids into nature and into farming. So these worms are so important. As a matter of fact, even, look at this guy. He's really into it, Finding something in the worm bin. So people are fascinated by the worms. Look at her. She found something in the worm bin that fascinates her too. And then we save our worms. The best way to save your worms is to use this screening method that I came up with, where you put a window screen, like you have on your home, on top of the worms. After 4 months, they've increased in population by 4 times their number. Now you're going to get your worms out, because some of these varieties live over 20 years. So they are livestock. We don't look at them as just worms. We have over $300,000 worth of livestock. So they crawl through that screen to get to their next food, and that's how we remove them without hurting the worms. So if you guys are going to if you're inspired today about going into vermicomposting, what you have to do tonight is, or when you get back home, is to go and cut off your window screens, and then you'll have some of the supplies you'll need. So we sell these worm castings at $4 a pound. And even though worms are the same sex, my daughter, who's an artist, came up with this thing about worms, and hopefully it'll help. So we sift out the heavy stuff, and you wind up with this. Now, 8 months ago, that was carbon and nitrogen, and now it's the highest quality organic fertilizer in the world. And now you can take that. Every 5 pounds produces 25 gallons of liquid fertilizer, and you aerate it, and it bumps up the bacterial levels of all good bacteria, and you can use this to spray on your crops. It acts as a fertilizer through the leaves, or it goes into the soil, and it also acts as an insect repellent to keep insects. As long as that material is on the leaf, insects don't invade the leaves. So the other thing that we do as we take that compost after we've built these hoop house greenhouses, and we put 24 inches, 36-inch wide beds with 18-inch pathways, and we grow in this material. That's our signature growing. Remember the 3-barrel configuration that I showed you before? Remember those 3 little barrels? I was able to engineer that into this 10,000-gallon system. We dug out 300 yards of clay soil and built this 2-level growing system. This is called aquaponics. That's a symbiotic relationship between plants and fish. The plants pull out the waste that the fish, after it goes through a process, that the fish give off. So in this particular house, we have 10,000 lake perch on the left, which are mercury contaminated in the Great Lakes, and there's a moratorium on commercially fishing for them now, which is the signature fish in the Midwest now. but you have a hard time finding them on your menu. And on the right, we also grow tilapia. So those systems produce about $100,000. That system cost about $10,000 to construct. One pump operates that entire system, and it's a closed system. Here's our staff putting in some of the 10,000 lake perch into the system. Those are tilapia. That's what they look like. Those are baby tilapia. That's a full-size tilapia. Those are more tilapia. Lake perch, lake perch, lake perch, lake perch, tilapia, tilapia. That's a black pacu. If anybody's here from South America and the Amazon, this fish gets up to 60 pounds. It's related to piranha. It only eats vegetables, nuts, and berries. It has omega-3 in its meat, and we're doing some research on whether we're going to grow these out. This one's about 20 pounds. The chefs want this at about 20 pounds, so we're working, and then we do some koi as well, but we don't eat those. What you're about to see is what we're working with, a great relationship we have with the Great Lakes Institute at UWM. We have a research station at Growing Power, but this is at the Institute, and this is how we're going to get back into our lake perch production. So those are lake perch. I don't know if you can see them very well. Those are fingerlings, and the big roadblock is not having enough fingerlings for all the people we're training. This is at the Institute. This is a mechanical system. Those grates have egg strands on them. Those egg strands come from a fish. This is in the spring time, or really 4 times a year, because we can breed these fish now 4 times a year. In Lake Michigan, they only breed these naturally 1 time a year, and it takes 3 years to reach maturity. So here's Dr. Binkowski, who I work with. He's going to squeeze out the egg strand out of the fish. What's happening is not hurting the fish, by the way. And once he gets that egg strand out, it's about 1 yard long. It's about 80,000 potential offspring. He's going to straighten it out. And then he's going to reach in the tank and grab a male fish. Now, the trick of this whole thing is you have to know the difference between a male and a female for this to work. So he squeezes out the sperm from the male fish into the egg strand, and then he goes to the kitchen and grabs a mixing bowl. And then he hand mixes that, and now they're fertilized. That's how it's done. And then you get these wonderful fish. So he's training me. I'm the only person he's ever, over many, many years, that he's ever trained. And it's really cool. This is a biosecure area, so you got to wear aprons, and you have to have little booties on your feet and stuff, so you don't bring any virus into the system. And now we have these egg strands that produce, in this particular 1,000-gallon tank, will produce over 1 million offspring. It takes 12 days from the time that you squeeze out the egg strand and pin it to the grate that they start hatching out. And so that's how we're going to get back into this wonderful tasting fish. So what we've done at Growing Power is built out a research station. And again, this is an unusual relationship, because usually universities go into communities and extract stuff and never leave anything behind. But we funded this project. Growing Power funded this project, and we have a mechanical system, and we also have 4 other systems. So we're doing research that's never been done before in aquaculture. And this system is heated by solar. We have solar panels, and the one on the far end is heated by compost. So we run PEX tubing around the exterior, and we run it outside into a compost pile, because all systems have to be at 70 degrees to grow the fish out. And you can grow this fish out in about 10 months, whereas in the wild, it takes 3 years. Those are chillers, because the water has to be chilled to do reproduction, and we're going to be doing reproduction in a tank. But these beds on the right correspond with each one of the systems. Each one of the systems has different type of filtration, and that's part of the study to see which system is more efficient.